What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. This episode we're going to be working on Nick's Cabrio. We're getting the engine set. We're going to be going over the pistons, piston rings, rod bearings, main bearings, and the oil pump. It's going to be a three-part episode, or a three-part series. The first series is going to be the block. The second is going to be mounting the cylinder head, getting the camshafts put back in, getting the camshaft, chain, and tensioner cams all timed up. And then the third part is going to be getting the actual main timing belt set up. And then after that, I'll be ready to be dropped back into Nick's car, getting it ready for Helen. All right, guys. All right, guys, we're going to start off with getting these oil squirters tightened down to 27 Newton meters. And once they're tight, you start putting the main bearings in. Definitely want to clean out the journals. This block was acid dipped from machine shop, so we shouldn't have any issues with any of that. Actually looked really clean before we painted it. Alright, there is two different bearings when you order them in the kit. You have one that has the groove and one does not. The groove will always face the oil squirter on the block itself, or the oil port. And they are tanged, so they will only go in one way in the block itself. Then you have your thrust washers. You do have an upper and a lower. They're tanged also. It rides right on the edge of the journal. And after you got the thrust washers in, it's time to put the crank in. Always oil up your lower bearings. And then put a little bit of oil back on the top. Same thing with the main caps. They are tanged. They're only going one way. On the new main bolts, you want to oil them up. You always replace these. These are one-time use. All right, the crank bolts get torqued to 65 Newton meters and then a quarter turn. That's about it. Quarter. All right, now that the crank's in the block, it's onto the pistons. We do have new pistons, new wrist pins, and new piston rings. I'm going to show you guys how to remove the piston and put the new ones on. There is a notch on the one side of the piston for the lock ring. You have to pry that out. Then you take a socket that's the size of the ring pin, the wrist pin, I'm sorry. Alright, our new pistons did come with new wrist pin springs. Once you get it past the groove, push your wrist pin. You get the ring set, get the lock ring set back in place. Then you pull the wrist pin back out. Now put your rod back in. First set's done. I'm not going to bore you with the rest of them. We'll come back to the piston rings. All right, guys, on the piston rings, you have 5 rings total. You have 3 lower rings, which are your oil scraper rings. One looks like a spring, and the other 2 are regular flat rings. You want to be sure you have them clocked, or where the splits are at, you want to be sure they're clocked away from one another. You don't want any of them in the same line. And then on the second ring and then the top ring, you want to do the same thing. I always set them 180 out from one another, being sure that they're clear from the other splits in the rings. Here in a few, you'll see that I marked the top of the piston where I wanted all the rings to sit before we put it into the block. On the second oil ring, you'll see that there's a 90-degree notch cut out. That needs to be facing downwards. And on the top ring, usually it'll say top, or it'll have numbers or the part numbers written. They always face upwards. And when it comes to the actual connecting rods, you have flat rods and then you have broke rods. These are broke rods, so you want to be sure you mark the lower section of the rod cap so you can put it in the correct orientation when you put it back in the block. It will not go the other way, but I have seen somebody try and they end up wiping the bearings. So safe precaution, just take a yellow paint pen, fingernail polish, mark the side of the rod over the crack so you know which way it goes. And just like the main bearings, the rod bearings are 2 different ones. You have an upper and a lower. The upper always has the hole drilled through it, which is for the oil up towards the wrist pin on the rifle drilled rod. All right, but look at the top of the piston. I took the yellow paint marker and I marked 5 different lines. That is the orientation of all 5 piston rings. Obviously, the one with the notch where it faces the front of the block is the upper 2 rings. One faces the front, one faces the back, and then the other 3 lines are for the oil scraper rings. All right, the block's all put back together. And then next episode, we'll get the cylinder head installed, get the camshafts, and the cam timing done. All right, guys, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and we'll catch you on the next one.